Welcome back to the Driven to Learn podcast. My name is Coretta Lemetra, and I talk about all of the mindset, curriculum, and environmental support shifts that help students crush the ACT and the SAT, and lessons from my life and my work that help support college counselors and administrators at independent schools. And I'm really excited about the content that I've put together for you today. Almost every single student that comes into your office and into my coaching sessions has so many beliefs about themselves that affect how they will do on the ACT or the SAT. I mean, we all do, right? We all have beliefs about who we are, how smart we are, what we're capable of, what we're not capable of. I hear it from literally, you'll be in the grocery store and somebody says, "Oh, I'm not the kind of person who blah blah blah," or I can't do something. I can't fix cars. I can't do this. I can't do that. These stories start at a very young age, and some of them are because of societal expectations. Oh, I'm a girl. Somebody told me the girls don't do this. I'm a boy. Somebody told me boys don't do this. Or it might just be that they had a hard time in a class and they start believing, I can't do math. I'm no good at math. I'm just not one of those people who can do math. I'm just not one of those people who can do grammar. I'm just not one of those people who can take standardized tests. And all of these are very convincing, right? How many things do I believe in a day that are not necessarily true, but that limit me from doing things? I'm constantly working on making sure that I examine my beliefs, see what's holding me back from living the life that I want to, and make sure that I shift those beliefs so that I am living and building the life that I want to. When a student comes to me, one of the first thing I do is identify what limiting beliefs they have about the content that the test covers. Have you experienced that? A student walks into your office and they're like, "Well, I'm not going to do well on this test. I can't do math. I can't work under pressure. I'm just terrible at reading." I just had a student taking the ACT, and he wants to go into engineering sciencey fields, which means he also has an interest in those topics. He's learned a lot about them. But at the beginning of the session, when we were going to focus on science, he said, I just hate the science section. I hate it. And I said, why do you hate it? He said, because I'm so tired when I get to the end. I just feel stupid. And I was like, oh, well, luckily, I happen to know that your interest in science and the abilities that you already have will allow you to get a very high score on science. There's just a disconnect between how you're approaching the test, which makes sense. This test is different than the tests you've taken in the past. Let me tell you a little bit about how I would do it and how it's actually kind of fun to hack the test, figure out what they're asking for. And it's not about the test being a sham. The test measures some very specific skills, but it's very empowering for a student to think, oh, okay, I actually know what they're going to test me on, and now I feel powerful again. So for the science section, I was like, don't do all the reading. The reading is exhausting. There is so much content there. And what the test writers actually care about is that you know the scientific method. You know how to set up an experiment, what the different parts of an experiment are, and that you can read graphs. You can read tables, and you can read charts. And he's like, wait, I can do that. And I was like, I know. I've seen you do it. So we went through and I coached him on how to do it. And honestly, I get very, very excited about it because I know that the way he's approaching it versus the way he could be approaching it, he's going to feel so powerful. He's going to feel like, oh my gosh, I just did that. And so over the course of an hour and a half, we went through and I showed him how I approach the test, knowing what I know about what the test is actually testing and what the thinking was behind the questions. Very, very clear, simple changes. Instead of reading all this text and getting confused and not understanding what the test was testing, he applied these strategies. And at the end, he had this little smile on his face. And he goes, I think I actually like the science section. I was like, don't be embarrassed. You crushed it. And it was so satisfying. I mean, that's all you want, right? Is for a student to go out in the world knowing that they can build the life that they want to live and that you got them there. You were part of their journey. And I think the tests can feel very disempowering for a lot of students. But when you go to a new class, you have a new teacher, you have to get to know their style, right? Not every teacher writes tests the same way. One person might have a lot of multiple choice questions. Another one has essay questions. One teacher draws from the textbook. Another one, it's exclusively their lectures. These are all skills that your students need in college. They're all skills that they need even if they don't go to college, right? Let's say they're taking a training to become a police officer or an RBT. That's somebody who works with students with autism in schools, if you're not familiar. No matter what kind of examination they're going to do, if they have a test taker mindset that is empowering, then they can easily find the information that is relevant to the test, understand what they're going to see on test day, and therefore have a plan that empowers them to succeed. Now, some students may need a little bit more support because they don't learn in a way that maybe the teacher is teaching. Maybe they just need a different approach. Their brains work differently. Fine. Then they can find the kind of support, and they deserve the kind of support that helps them get to the finish line. And those kinds of supports are out there. And that's something I really believe in empowering your students to do, is ask for help. There's so much benefit in asking for help because then you can get where you want to go. And that's something that we can model as adults too, right? As their role models, to say, you know what? We don't exist as one person just trying to make it on our own. We live in a community. There's people who know stuff that I don't know, and I can ask them to teach me. You know, as an adult, I find experts who know something, and I pay them to teach me because I want to change my life. And when students can understand that this is normal, it is normal to need somebody to coach you, to show you how to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish. That can really make them feel good about asking questions and about asking for help and about saying, hey, I want this. You know, sometimes it can seem like maybe not that cool to, and this is dependent probably on the context of their social environment. But if they actually like want to do well in the test, but they know it's going to take them a lot of work, they might be embarrassed about this. But it's, you know, going to happen a million times in their life. Some things they want, they're going to have to ask for help, and they should ask for help. Or they need to set aside the time to study on their own, which is a lot of what I did back when I was studying for the ACT. I was very strong in my academics. I was almost a straight A. I was a straight A student across every single class, and yet I still needed to bridge from my academics to the test. And I remember when I was sitting there and I was like, oh, the science test isn't about all the science knowledge in the world. Because how could they test that? Not every school curriculum is the same. They can't just randomly test science knowledge. They will throw in a couple questions per test, sure, that they expect most people to know. But the vast majority of the questions are on what is a heartbeat across science, and that is how to set up an experiment, how to look at the different parts of the experiment and tell the test takers, okay, I see this in the experimental design, and reading graphs, reading charts, making predictions based on those charts. Those are skills that our students have learned in their classes, that your students have learned in their classes. And if they understand that that is what the test writer is asking for, then they are empowered to succeed on the test. Mindset matters. At the beginning of that hour and a half, my student was so intimidated by the science section. And he was saying, I just hate it. It's so stressful. I'm always exhausted, and exhaustion matters on the tests, right? Because they're kind of long. You're asked a lot, boom, 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 question after question after question after question. So when students can be empowered to understand this is what the test takers expect me to show, then they can do that, right? So helping students step into their true identity as somebody who is a scholar, as somebody who is flexible and adapting to testing environments, somebody who can take a step back and say, okay, I've learned all of these math skills, grammar skills. How do I apply them in this context? That matters. Building a bridge. So mindset matters. Limiting beliefs matters. Actually, another example that's coming to mind is a student, and actually this one comes up quite a lot with students. Grammar. They're just like, I hate grammar. Never been good at grammar. And I had a student recently, and this is a student who's generally very, he's sitting back in his chair, he's relaxed, I'm honestly like very impressed by his just very good poise and composure. I think it'll serve him well in life. And so when he came and he was really stressed about this English section, I kind of realized, this one's different. This is not going to be like the sections that he feels really, really confident in. He was, tense. He was kind of like, he just wanted to get it over with. He didn't even want to start it. And then as we started the questions, I noticed, I'm like, he's not even really reading the questions. He just wants to blow past them. But that's not going to work. So we have to work on his mindset. How can he step into his true identity as somebody who's learned a million things and can learn these grammar skills or remember them? And then, like I was talking about before, figure out how to apply the grammar skills he's learned in his classes to the context of the test. A lot of students get thrown because when you're in an English class and they ask about a grammar skill, you know exactly which grammar skill they're testing, right? The test is like, okay, this chapter is on modifiers. So they know to use the modifier skills on the test. And it may have been a couple years since they learned those skills in the test. So they have that, the lack of clarity on what's being tested and the fact that it's been a couple years. They need to address both of those as they're approaching the test. I need to not get too into the weeds here. Mindset. Student said, I can't do grammar. I hate grammar. I've just never been good at grammar. And that meant that when he was reading the questions, he was just kind of checked out. He wasn't really engaging with it. So I said, well, what does it feel like when you look at these questions? He's like, it's just like, just kind of gets, loud. I'm in my brain. I'm just kind of like freaked out about it. And I was like, that makes sense. What does that, if we talk to that inner part of you like it was like maybe a scared little kid, maybe that would help. Let me tell you how I deal with this. And I said, sometimes when I'm doing something, it freaks out a part of me. Maybe not all of me, because there's, we have these different skills. We know we can handle difficult situations, but there's a part of me that just is not happy. It's just like, I hate this. I don't want to do this. Get me out of the situation. I'm stressed. What if we can't do this? And it just freaks out. And I have figured out for myself that if I look at that part of me, I say, hey, yeah, tell me about it. What's freaking you out? And it's just like, sometimes that inner part of me is just a 3-year-old, and it just is like, I just need to scream right now. And I'm like, okay, do that. And internally, I just let that little kid just go, ah! And I notice it and I feel it. And then I'm like, okay, I love you. And I got this. I've learned a lot of things, and I know you're scared, and I've got you. How about after we do this, I'll get you a popsicle. And the student just starts laughing. And he was delighted by it. I was like, okay, so would that help? Would like to tell your inner child that, just tell them like, hey, I know this is really scary, but I've learned a lot of things before. Let me give this a try. We're just going to try a couple questions. I've got this. I know you are freaking out. Let's think about a popsicle. And he loved it. I was like, okay, great. So we worked through the English and I said, we're going to look at this like the section that you really feel confident in, math, right? There's certain things you need to learn. There's only a couple rules they're going to test you on. Let's learn one at a time and have a strategy. And he goes, yeah, okay, that works. It's good to have a strategy. And that's another point about mindset. Clarity creates confidence. When it's a confusing mass of a million questions, of course, students are overwhelmed. But clarity, okay, I just need to know how to do this. This is the kind of questions I'm going to see. I know exactly which questions I'm going to skip or guess on. Clarity creates confidence. And it helps students step into that identity, right? They're wrestling with all these different beliefs that they have in their head. I can't do this. I'm the kind of person who can do this. But if we give them a skill that says, okay, listen, you've got different parts of yourself, and a part of you might believe, hey, I'm not good at math. What about you tell that part of yourself, like, hey, you've had a hard time with math in the past. Actually, you've like maybe felt bad about that. But there's a chance that you can get some additional points here. You've got a great coach with you. Let's just give it a shot. And the confidence that students can get in a 20 minutes of practice, 40 minutes of practice is massive. And it just makes me really, really, really happy when they get to have that transformation. I know it for myself. When I don't believe I can do something, I'll find a million reasons not to even try. Or when I feel like I don't want to do something, but it matters to me, I will find a million reasons why it doesn't fit in my schedule. But then when I decide, okay, no one's going to clean the car but you, Coretta, then I end up saying, okay, you know what? I'm cleaning the car at 4 p.m. because I want to get in my car and see. I'm the kind of person who makes sure she feels good in her car. Like, I like my car. Well, you know what? My car's not always clean, and that's okay. I have a vibrant life. But sometimes I like to get in there and be like, ooh, I've cleaned it. I like to make my bed. I like to go into my bedroom at night and be like, it looks like a hotel in here. I feel like somebody cares about me, like I'm luxurious. Those kinds of acts of self-care make such a big difference, don't they? Like, what do you do that makes you feel just like a little bit more cared for or a little special? Could be getting your favorite drink at Starbucks. It doesn't have to be somebody else's favorite drink. It's what you like, right? How many pumps of caramel do you like in your iced coffee? Or are you a cake pop kind of person? Or do you like a breakfast sandwich? All of these little moments of self-attunement and self-care are powerful. So mindset and limiting beliefs are a huge part of paving the way to success on the SAT and the ACT. And you can do a lot for your students if they come into your office and they're stressed about the test. For one, let them tell you why. Why are you scared? What's intimidating about that? And see if you can help them get a little bit of clarity on exactly what it is that's holding them back. Maybe they just feel like they don't even know where to start, right? They're like, oh, how am I ever going to fit this in with all of my academics? Well, actually, fun fact, it doesn't take all that much time to make big score improvements if you have somebody who can guide you, show you where your gaps are, and help you develop a strategy. Reach out to me. I'm happy to help create a strategy plan for your students, for your school. And some students may be really self-motivated. Like, they just prefer to get a book. There's plenty of excellent prep books out there. And if somebody is really, really motivated, encourage them to do that. It can really build their confidence. Yeah, so creating spaciousness is really helpful. Let's see. I'm gonna get a little sip of water. Mindset. Mindset is half the battle for this good increase in score on the SAT and the ACT. And the mindset shifts happen when we can identify the limiting beliefs that are between the student and the version of themselves who is confidently taking the test and has made a huge score improvement because they had clarity. They knew exactly what the test was going to test them on, just like they know how their teachers write their tests. They know how the ACT writers or the SAT writers have created the test. They have clarity and they have confidence because they know, okay, I saw that I had a gap in these 10 skills, and maybe they didn't have time to address all 10, but they had time to address 8. And they got a big bump in their score because they addressed 8. Not only did they get a bump in their score, but they gained confidence that is going to serve them for life because their brain has now internalized when there is a gap and I make a plan, I can see success. When I see something I want, I can figure out the building blocks and motivate myself or have people surround me and motivate me, be my cheerleading coaches, and I can make good things happen for myself. The ACT and SAT can be so much more than just something that students have to check off. They can be part of how your team, how you support these students to live their most empowered lives. Good prep, just like good classes, is something that shows students that they are good at learning, that they are good at overcoming limiting beliefs, of choosing who they want to be, of surrounding themselves with people who support them, and of building their life. And of course, the ACT and SAT can go beyond that and get them amazing scholarships and get them into schools that launch them to the careers or the locations that they want to be, make, amazing connections, endless opportunities. But the prep itself can be something that creates internal confidence that your student thinks, oh my God, wait, am I actually good at reading? Maybe it doesn't matter if I think I'm bad at something. Maybe I can just tell that part of myself, like, hey, something scary happened, and I don't believe that I'm the kind of person that can do this. But I'm going to just take a step back. I'm going to say, this person is telling me that I can learn it. Why don't I just borrow their faith for a moment? And because they've given me a very clear idea of what I need to learn, why don't I just try learning this one thing? Cool, I got a question wrong that tells me exactly what I need to learn. And the ACT and the SAT are actually perfect playground, perfect experimental zone for students to practice building confidence and building their learning skills and their test taking skills because they're predictable, which means that I can empower them to say, hey, this is your test. What do you want to do with it? I'm here to support you. Let's make this something that works for you. Let's figure out where you're at and where you're going, and I'll be here with you because I'm part of your team. And by the way, however you learn, let's work with it. I recently talked to another SAT coach who I just really appreciated talking to them. And I think it's really helpful for us to talk to each other because we're a community of support for these students. And I really liked his approach because there's some students that will really benefit from accommodations on the test. And he was telling me about a student who was getting every single question right, but in much, 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 much more time than was allotted for the test. And this coach was able to empower the student to get psych testing, forget what it was exactly called, testing to identify a learning disability. And because of that, the diagnosis, they were allotted extra time, and now they're at their dream college. So, every student might need something different, and that's the reality of us being complex, brilliant human beings that inhabit a world together. So as much as we can empower the student to say, hey, this is what my experience is, this is what I need, we can figure out exactly who might be the best coach for them, or if they need to self-study because that's how they work best, if they need in-person support, if they need accommodations, all the things that we can provide for them to make sure that they feel seen and that they have a clear path to success. All right. Let me know what of this you're going to move forward with this week or this month. I am so thrilled to be part of this community with you, making sure that students choose and build lives that bring them joy and that keep them connected in our amazing communities of mutual support. And yeah, we just want them to thrive, right? We just want them to thrive and want to do what we can for them. So I wish you a wonderful rest of your day. Thanks for joining me, and I look forward to providing you with some more insights next week on the podcast.